Welcome back, everybody. So, listen, if you were given an hour a day to do something you've always wanted time for, how would you use it? So, what if that hour was at 5 a.m.? Our next guest's new book, The 4% Fix How 1 Hour Can Change Your Life, reveals how timing can make all the difference. Welcome to the show, author Karma Brown.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Karma, we're happy to have you. And I think a lot of people have been thinking more and more about time, especially during this pandemic. So you suggest in this book that we carve out 1 hour sort of just for ourselves. And in particular, you say this is great to do in the morning. You yourself wake up between 4:30 and 5, and you do it. But when you first started out doing it, you did so kicking and screaming. So what made you start doing this, and how did you stick to it?
Yeah, I was a very happy night owl. And then we had a baby, and that baby never slept. She didn't nap, she didn't sleep, and then she was up at around 3:30 in the morning for the day. And so because you can't leave your children alone when they're young in particular, I was up doing Play-Doh and, other crafts and watching Dora the Explorer on repeat. And one day sort of bled into the next, and right? I mean, Dora the Explorer on repeat is just not a good way to start your morning. But I realized that I needed to look at that time differently. And maybe if I set up my daughter in a space that was safe for her, I could keep sort of one eye on her and one eye on this book that I had always wanted to write. And I started doing that and using that early morning time to write. And it was messy and it was bumpy, but then it turned into a book. And then I just turned it into a habit and I kept going.
Okay, so listen, I love that idea. It sounds very inspiring, but why does it have to be so early?
It doesn't have to be so early. So I like to say, it's not really about the when. That's not what's important here. It's about investing in yourself and giving yourself that hour. And I talk about having this 24 slice cake and that you're delivering a piece of cake sort of for every hour. And if you don't give yourself that first piece of cake in the morning, because everyone loves cake, who doesn't love cake? You end up with nothing, maybe crumbs by the end of the day as you've handled the responsibilities and other things you have going on. And so the morning is a time that it's quiet. There's already some barriers set up around protecting your time because no one else is up. Email isn't pinging. Children are hopefully sleeping. Work hasn't started. So it is a time of day where you're fresh and the world is still quiet. And so you can get some focused time.
I do like this idea. I'm still not convinced I could do it this early in the morning, but I will say that, we have this kind of collective obsession with this idea of productivity, at all costs. But you say that this hour that we carve out doesn't necessarily have to be productive. So if it's not being productive, what is it for?
Yeah, I mean, the only rule I have about this hour is that it can't be used for work. So the idea is that you're doing something that you're curious about, that you're excited about, that is worth putting your feet on the floor first thing in the morning and getting up to do. And if you focus on productivity, it becomes less fun. I'm a productivity nerd. I have lots of lists and I'm type A, but what I've managed to do is save some of that for later in the day. And I use that early morning time just for me. I use it without guilt. And it becomes the time that I have to tackle that thing that I'm excited about, that I'm really curious or interested in doing.
Karma, you alluded to this off the top that having kids changes a lot because your timetable is not necessarily yours to set anymore. In fact, let's be honest, they become the boss. So is there any wiggle room? Because it sounds like there's a real level of self-discipline required for this 4% fix. So where's the wiggle room in that, particularly speaking to parents?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing but wiggle room, to be honest. This is not meant to make your life more difficult. This is not meant to make you sleep deprived. Like you said, children rule the roost, and they do. And so this may be a time in your life where you cannot find that time for yourself. You just can't. And that's okay. Just thinking about it and brainstorming what you might do when you have a chance to get your feet on the floor and no one else needs you is progress. That's working towards this idea of investing that time in yourself. And if you can't do it at 5 a.m., try 7 a.m. If the morning's not great, do it at noon when your child's asleep or in the evening when everybody is down for the night. I mean, the point is not the when, It's that you do it and you try it out and see how it feels.
Your book not only talks about this particular hour of the day, but making the most of the time throughout the day. And in particular, you call this how the daily focused 4. Can you walk us through what that is?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I am a productivity nerd. I like to-do lists. I often put items down that I have already completed just so I can check them off again. And for me, I needed to really look at a way to focus some of that energy that I had on my values and my priorities. And so rather than creating this long, long list of things, I decided to just create 4 categories that were important to me that lined up with my values and priorities, as I said. And so I call it my Focus 4 list. And it changes sometimes throughout the year. But the ones that I have going right now, I have a health wellness box, a creativity box, a family box, and a productivity box. And really, I put one thing in each of those. Like, for example, I'm trying to meditate more. So I'm putting this 5 minutes of meditation in my creativity box. And once I do it, I check it off. And if I complete this list of 4 categories, one item, I feel productive. I feel like I've been successful. Not just in accomplishing something for myself that day, but also, as I said again, like lining up with what's important to me.
I love those. And those seem really, really attainable as well. You also warn when we're actually kind of sitting down and thinking like, what are the goals we'd like to achieve? You also warn to not set those goals too big. So what's the sweet spot? What's the formula in goal setting for you?
There's this acronym called BHAG, and I learned it when I was in consulting in my before life. And it stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. And it is this really big thing. And the great example is when I was writing my novel. If I thought only about my book as needing to be 90,000 words, it's pretty overwhelming to look at achieving that goal like as this big goal. And so I prefer to think of my goals the opposite of a BHAG, which I call a PHAG, and that's a petite, hairless, agreeable goal. And so the idea is to make the goal smaller. I know, right? It sounds so much friendlier, doesn't it? But instead of thinking about this huge novel project, I'm thinking about, okay, 500 words a day. I can do that. And I will sit down and do that as many days as I can. And really, in the end, the result is the same. I have a finished novel. I just have a much higher likelihood of completing it and reaching that goal. So I break my goals down into these smaller pieces that I feel are much more manageable and doable.
Okay, so that's where we kind of want to end off in all of this because, people might be thinking, okay, this sounds like something I could try. So I guess the basic question is, where should we start? I mean, are we setting our alarms for 5 a.m. tomorrow and then like off we go?
You can set your alarm for 5 a.m. tomorrow if you're not a morning person and see how that feels. And my guess is it's going to suck. And so, this is not that different from running a marathon. If you've only ever run a mile, you don't get up the next day and run a full marathon. Or you might try, but it will be unpleasant and painful. And so the best way to do this, if you want to try the morning, and again, you do you, if the morning's not right, then that's okay. But if you want to try the morning, set your alarm to wake up 10 minutes earlier than you normally do. And at the other end, you have to go to bed 10 minutes earlier because you can't sleep deprive yourself doing this. And then you wake up and you use that extra 10 minutes to do whatever you want. Maybe it's just an extra cup of coffee, staring out the window, wondering why you're doing this, maybe. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, try again and see how it feels. It is practice. It's consistency. It's like retraining how you approach your time without really without making your day worse, as I said, because if it's not fun, why would you do it?
Karma, thank you so much for joining us today, giving us so much to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want your 4% fix, you can get the book everywhere now. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.